Hello, my name is Wendy and I'm a clinical psychologist. On Sunday I started a series in which I'm joining you as we try to understand what COVID is bringing us to work through the challenges, particularly the emotional challenges, the fear, the dread, the uncertainty. Today I'll be looking at the element of helplessness. What do we mean by helplessness? What does it feel like to be helpless? How do we work with our own helplessness in a situation where we feel we have no control? When I was first qualified, I worked for some time at a rehab center. I think it was one of the most formative times, and in it at that time I developed a strong admiration for those who overcame addiction. I found that the 12-step program remains one of the clearest sources of a way in which we can proceed forward. Addiction is frightening. It's often misunderstood. People feel overwhelmed by their own guilt. And the 12-step program is a way in which people can overcome some of the worst odds around. I often work with families, and I found that leading them to the 12-step program is a way in which they too can cope and understand how to deal with something where they feel they have no control. It is chaotic, it is frightening, it is unpredictable, and I feel that very often this COVID virus carries the same elements. It's unpredictable. We know so little about it. It seems to have taken control of our lives. It's taken control of our financial lives, our emotional lives, our social lives. Here in South Africa, we're not able to visit family. Our social lives have become very, very stunted. We're missing them. The greatest source of care and the greatest source of comfort, which is often our family, is no longer available. It is just because I have seen how the 12-step program has assisted people in the past to overcome the worst odds that I'm going to take the 12-step program and look at it very carefully, the first 3 steps, because it's the first 3 steps that seem to have the most effect. We can only learn and we can only attempt to use them as our own source of power. The first step starts. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. I think we can use these words to apply to COVID. Just replace the word alcohol with COVID, with the virus. In many ways, our lives have become unmanageable. Even those who still have a job, even those who might still be going to work. Many are working in the front lines. Their lives are actually quite scary. Many are working from home, and even those whose lives have some semblance of normality, every time we go to a shop, everyone's wearing masks. It has in many ways become unmanageable. The second step is that we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. I find this very interesting because they talk about restoring us to sanity and a power greater than ourselves. I think if we think of the COVID-19 virus, we have to be confronted by the fact that the medical science is actually not helping us at the moment. It's quite scary because medical science was in many ways our savior, and now medical science cannot help us. Medical science has been rendered helpless. And that leaves us feeling all a little bit insane. It leaves us feeling like children in the dark. The third step is made a decision to turn our lives and will over to God as we understand Him or her. I think the second and the third step has often been a stumbling block for people. And it is because we've grown to believe we've made very much science as our God. Science is the one who helps us. And science in this regard is not around. We are feeling the helplessness that our ancestors felt in the past. When I've had to work in groups and I've had to work with step 2 and 3, I've often come up with resistance. I've often come up with a lot of emotion, a lot of fear, a lot of anger, and I realize that there are 2 reasons why people are so afraid of looking at the element of God or the element of a higher power. Very often it is rooted in our childhood, in our feelings of guilt, in our feelings of hopelessness. It may be unresolved pain and unresolved loss. People might feel angry with God because of prayers not answered. People might feel angry with God because they are projecting their own childhood onto an uncaring, angry, demanding God. So it's so important to look at where this resistance comes from. And I ask you very simply, if you find yourself resisting and you find yourself feeling, I really don't like that, I don't want to turn my life over to anything higher than I am. I don't believe in higher power, I don't believe in religion. I want you to think very carefully, is this from a childhood hurt? Is this from a childhood trauma? The other reason why people resist is quite simply because religion has in many respects failed us. A lot of people turn to me and they say, look at all the religious wars. Look at what's happening today. Look at how many people are killed in the name of religion. And I must say, I can't disagree with that. Religion has failed us on many levels. And I think this is where we have to try to dig deeper. We have to say, this is not religion, this is not God, this is a construct, this is a way in which it's been abused. Governments can be abused, anything good can be abused, but that doesn't make the underlying structure or the underlying belief bad. We have to really look and examine in terms of saying, ultimately, what does it mean to me? I'm going to try and ask you to put aside the many voices from your childhood and the many times where you felt irritated by other people's intolerance, by other people's wanting you to believe the way they believe and what they believe. I want you to say, put that aside. That is their issue. My issue right now is, do I have a higher power? Very often when I look at higher power, I want to look at it in terms of attributes. I find that people tend to fall into either heart attributes or mind attributes. The heart attributes are things that are relationship driven, things like generosity, kindness, things like love, attachment. We can see it in so many forces of nature, the way a mother cares for its little one. These are all the voices of a higher power, the love that is there at every turning of nature where there is a caring for another. Then there are the attributes of the mind, the will, learning, understanding, knowledge. I find so many people who I work with say very vehemently that they are atheist, and yet I find within them such a passion for understanding, for knowledge, for using their knowledge, for using their knowledge to good, for using their knowledge towards integrity. And what they don't realize is that they are actually showing a lot of giving in to some higher power, something that is bigger than them, something that is greater than them. I'm going to ask you, what is your higher power? I'm going to ask you not in the sense of, oh, I'm Christian, or I'm Muslim, or I'm Jewish, or I'm Buddhist, or I'm atheist. That's a good one. I'm going to ask you in terms of what motivates you, what stories in your childhood particularly really got you excited. I remember when I first read about St. Francis, I fell absolutely in love with him. And everything St. Francis stands for is in my higher power. I would say, St. Francis, if you have to personify what my higher power is, it would be in this love of nature, in his poetic voice, in his spontaneity. Everything that St. Francis stands for is what I stand for. And I want you to try and think about the people you've most admired, even fictional characters. I think something like Harry Potter. Harry Potter has now stirred a new generation of people. What is your higher power? It might be a religious figure. It might be a figure from a novel. It might be a figure who you've admired in your own life. But I want you to think of something that is greater than you, that has attributes that you wish you had had, attributes that you would like to strive towards. Addiction's a terrible affliction, but it's also a family affliction. It's not just the one person, it's everyone that's pulled into it. And this is another way in which I say, you know what, this is bigger than us, which is why we need to turn over towards something bigger than us. I think we're looking and we're saying science looks very puny at the moment. Spend some time in silence. Spend a little time believing that you can be saved and will be saved. Spend some time saying, I have purpose. Believing in a higher power is believing that you have a purpose, that you are not just some leaf in the wind. And this is so important in a time of COVID. It's so important that we believe that every life right now matters, that we are not just statistics, that we are useful, and that we are lovable beings. The story of a recovering addict is the story of a hero. The hero is on a quest. The hero is going to become once more someone who is capable of controlling his world. The hero is capable of using his imagination. And this is the story we all need to follow. COVID, in many respects, has become this uncontrollable element in our lives. If we believe that we can overcome through discovering our higher power, through discovering what is important to us, we then become the heroes again of our own life. Thank you very much.